All right, guys, we're back. We're coming live from Deuce Gym, the loudest gym in America. We got 17 different sessions going on and 14 different playlists playing, so I hope you're enjoying the ambiance. We're going to call that ambiance. On this episode of the Hold It Standard podcast, we're going to hear from a true professional. I met Kyle Henmi when I was a young coach. I knew less than nothing, okay? Just starting out in my career. And as a high school sophomore, Kyle's dad would drive him to meet me to train in, some way that would help him get to the next level and advance his baseball career to college. Today, Kyle's created a monster training brand called Dawg Pound Athletics, and he's driving adaptation in the country's best athletes. At this point, he's trained more than 200 professional college and high school players. They come in here in order, right? It's like the young guys and then the college guys and then the pro guys, and everybody's looking up to somebody. It's an incredible culture. And the fact of the matter is, Kyle has forgotten more about developing speed and power than I've ever learned. So he is an inspiration to the entire staff here. In this episode, you'll learn more than just his journey. You're going to learn more than just how to dominate the coaching profession. Kyle is a model for product market fit, and any leaders would be inspired by his ability to create remarkable value by going specific. He is very clear about who is and who is not his customer, and he's reaping those benefits. And I'm just so excited for you guys to hear from Kyle. Please enjoy Kyle Henmi of Dawg Pound Athletics. Welcome to the Hold the Standard podcast, bro.
Bro, thank you for having me.
I'm glad you're here.
I'm excited about this.
Kyle, I was just saying we're around each other hours every day. And
every day.
Yeah, but we don't get a chance to rap at a deep level often.
Yeah.
I usually start these podcasts with, it's becoming my thing, an obscure question that is random and puts us in storytelling mode. Okay. But I actually don't want to do that. I just want you, if you could, because I'm curious, could you give us a rundown of a typical busy day?
Oh, no, for sure.
What does it look like? Because one of the things you said before we got on here was you haven't eaten all day. You guys, it's 3:26 in the afternoon, and you're 0 calories in.
There's some calories in some NOCOs. How many calories in a NOCO?
Bro, okay, so you have some calories in via NOCO. So give us you can pick the day, you can embellish a little bit if you want, but give me a busy one.
I'll go today. So I'll wake up at 3:30. The alarm goes up at 3:05, but I'm a big snooze. I'm the dude with 12 alarms.
Okay.
So
3:05.
3:05, and then probably till 3:40, then I get up.
Okay.
Wake up, drive to the gym, get here around 4:15.
Is that straight out of bed in the car? You don't do nothing that you don't make coffee. No. You're out.
I just gotta go. I just gotta get in the car. If I don't get in the car, then I'm screwed.
Okay.
Get here around 4:15. Slam a NOCO. First thing I do. Have to.
Wow.
Then it gets me to the base level. Then I'll grab another one, and then it'll get me up for my workout. So I'll work out from 4:15 to 5:15.
I'm gonna keep interrupting. Did you just say you have 2 before you start training?
For sure.
Whoa.
And that's me dialing it back. Bro, back in the day, I used to have 500 milligrams.
Your day is the fitness version of what's homeboy Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Hunter S. Thompson. This is a bad reference. Those of you who are listening and want to Google that, you can Google a day in the life of Hunter S. Thompson, and it's he does so much cocaine before he can even do anything. Okay, so your 2 no-goes in, and it's 4 a.m, and you haven't worked out yet.
Not yet. And then I'll train till 5:15-ish. And then I'll have like a 5:30 group that'll come in because they need to come in before school. And then there are some kids that live more local, so then they'll come in at 6. So then it's like a big cluster of like kids are halfway through the workout. Then I like gotta start the kids.
Times.
Yeah. Okay. It's like a 5:30 and a 6. Get down around 7. Drive to someone's house. 7:30 to 8:30. Drive back down. PTs from 9 to what now? So like 2:30, 3 o'clock. Now we're here. And then I'll have another session after till like 6:30. And then I'll call her a day.
Good God.
It's just another day.
So when do you eat?
When I get home.
At night.
At like 7.
He just eats at night.
Yeah, I just eat at night. That's why I have all the no-goes.
Yeah.
And the Zins.
Yeah, 100%. So that's helpful context. For the folks that are listening at home, I'm specifically talking to you, Kyle, for a lot of reasons. One is I really admire the business that you've built. I admire you as a coach. I think that you've quietly would be a rude way to say. I almost said you quietly have become the best strength and conditioning coach in ball sports, specifically baseball, within hundreds of miles of here. That's something that I really believe to be true. You know, I'm curious about all of it. And so let's give some context. Your background, team sports, talk about baseball and how you even got introduced to strength and conditioning. Some of that context will help.
Yeah. So I've been playing baseball since I could swing a bat. My dad was like, he played ball in high school, so he was like, my son just for sure has to play baseball.
Yeah.
So I played baseball from 4, played high school, went to Azusa Pacific for 4 years, played college for all 4 years, and then I didn't get into strength conditioning till, this is going to be funny because this is where you and me met.
Yeah, that's right. We did meet. Yeah.
So my end of freshman year, we have a mutual friend. He's like my uncle.
Of high school?
Of high school.
Yeah.
He's like my uncle, and he ended up actually coaching Logan when he was in high school?
Ron Osaki. Yeah. He helped out with the scout team, I think, throughout high school.
Yeah. So I was, my freshman year, I was 5 foot, like 160. Big boy.
5.0?
5.0.
Okay.
160 pounds.
Let's go.
And my uncle was like, so you need to like,
that's not going to work.
That's just not going to work. Dude.
Okay.
So he was like, well, I used to coach this guy that like actually like does strength conditioning. Like you should check it out. And I was like, dude, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like, sure, I'll just follow you, whatever. So that's where we met. And you were at CrossFit LA at the time.
Yep. Which is hilarious. Yeah. Because I was an intern at CrossFit LA, and for him to say that I do strength and conditioning is hilarious. It's hilarious. I was taking out the trash. Yeah. But that's not true. You had a lifting.
I did like velocity.
Yeah. You were training at velocity. Yeah. I mean, just so for those of you that are listening, you're a freshman in high school. I'm coaching you, allegedly. But you had a mean hang power clean, like all dialed in.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
You knew how to lift. It was unreal. And so you're ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
When I was a freshman in high school, I was doing like the wooden dowel shit in my room, like getting my forearms jacked.
The rice bucket.
Yeah, that was the extent of my training.
Old school shit.
So you were progressive.
No, yeah. Okay. And I started at a pretty decent age, and you got me right. And I remember that sophomore year, I think I hit like 5 doubles. Like for me, like
went off.
Big thing.
Yeah.
And then we worked out up until like high school. Then I went to college. Obviously, we couldn't work out because I'm gone or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until end of my junior year in college, my Asian parents wanted me to be a physical therapist. And if you know anything about me, I'm not like super smart. So
well, we'll talk about that because you are.
Oh yeah.
I know what you're saying.
No, I'm like book smart.
You weren't trying to do the school thing.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to do the school thing. And Ron Ozaki, the guy that hooked us up, his wife is a physical therapist, and he was like, yeah, he's going to have to retake all these classes. He got seasoned. Right. And I looked at my dad, and I was like, bro, there ain't no shot, bro. There's no way.
Yeah, one and done, yeah.
So then he goes, well, you live for baseball all the time, and like you like helping people. Like, what about strength and conditioning?
Right.
And I was like, oh, maybe. And he goes, well, Logan has that new gym. I think this is 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember seeing Ron. I rarely see him, but I saw him in the parking lot of Whole Foods.
Hello, random.
And it was like right after you'd come over interning.
Yeah.
And he was like, he loves it. And I was like, really?
No, I mean, it was a good experience. I mean, for the 3 months that I was here for the summer, my end of my junior year going into my senior year, I was telling Uncle Ronnie, like, bro, I've learned more than I'd learned 3 years in freaking college.
Right.
And like it was like all textbook stuff and like philosophies, but like we never like got to put it into practice. Like I got to like see how people put it into practice, like how to coach.
Yeah.
So then go through my senior year, for sure was not good enough to get drafted or play after that. So I was like, well, what the fuck am I gonna do now?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I love Deuce. Like I might as well just go back.
Right.
Like why not? Like I feel like that's just like the natural thing to do. So then come back after I graduate, and then that's when you introduced me to the coaches prep program.
Yeah.
And rest is history.
Yeah. Back then, did you know who you wanted to coach? Because, and we'll talk about this probably as we go, but one of the things that's interesting about your success as a coach is you can coach anybody. And you do coach people who are from all walks of life, but also that's not really the totality of your thing. Like you've crushed this athlete specific thing. Did you know back then that you wanted to coach athletes, or did that change over time?
I was leaning toward that. Working with athletes, it's a special place in my heart. I've had a bunch of mentors baseball wise, and then obviously having good coaches in the weight room that I wanted to be able to give back to my experiences, because I know a lot of these kids don't have that.
Right.
And it just fires me up to be like, oh, like I can give back to what I was blessed with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, dude. I mean, I say this often, probably not to you, but like to whoever who's next to me. I look across the yard and see what your athletes, you'd probably call them athletes, are doing. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, like if you had this exposure, if I had this exposure, I don't know, you probably feel this way, but if I had that exposure at that age, like, I just wonder what that would have been like, you know?
100%.
And the question I wanted to ask is, do you think that your style as a player has bled into who you are as a coach now? And I say that because, and I don't want to make my story like yours if it's not, but I'll just say that I know that I care about this because I had to be an intangible guy or I wasn't going to make a team.
Yeah.
You know, so it was like, I feel lucky in that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't like a crazy high talent prospect guy to where I could just slough off in the weight room. And so I think those kinds of players make great coaches for that reason.
I said that all the time.
Yeah,
I was like, look at my kids. I call them my kids, but like my athletes. Yeah. And I'm like, man, you know how I'm hella nice at this shit? And they're like, what? They're like, man, because I was not that good of a player.
Right.
I was like, I know enough about your sport because I played it. Yeah. But I wasn't good enough to, like you said, slack off.
Right.
If you don't know baseball, people 5'5", 5'6", 5'7", like usually aren't on a team in college.
Right.
They're like, there's always like the token one.
100. Dude, I got starstruck like twice in my short baseball career, and one of the times was I shared a cage with David Eckstein one time, and I was like, that's the one.
Yeah.
I mean, a guy who like kicked the front door down on the major leagues and like forced his way in. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And part of the reason for my question is it's not just about the straightforward, like, oh, strength and conditioning means a lot to you because guys like you and I had to focus on it. But also, I know you're a grinder. I was a grinder, but we just heard about your whole day. So it's not like you're not doing that again. No, you know what I mean? And so
it helped me through this process of when I stepped into this field and, you know, we talked about the discipline and the consistency. It's like, it's not anything new to me. like waking up early, staying out late, doing the extra little things that I had to do to become a college baseball player. I just applied those lessons that I learned for baseball into strength and conditioning. All those same lessons, like working hard, the discipline, the sleep and the eating or whatever, like having to do all those little things to get to be where I wanted to be in college, to just do that same thing, but just for strength and conditioning.
Yeah. I wonder if you have a point of view on this stuff. You probably do so many things well just because it seems obvious to you, but I would imagine you have an opinion about what's happening in the world of strength and conditioning, especially as it relates to baseball.
Yeah.
How do you see that landscape? What are those coaches getting wrong? What are you getting right, maybe, that you don't think other people are getting right?
I still see people lifting the old way of like, just put it on your chest and you just bench it, or you just curl it, or you just whatever. And there's still a lot of people out there that still believe in that old school way. And the good thing is there are a lot of people that are coming up into baseball training where they're finding their new ways of coaching. And it's like, hey, like you have to adapt or die. Like we have more information now than we used to back in the day. Don't stick with the old school thing. Like still doing some strength stuff is good, but learning to move your body in space and talking about the pelvis and the trunk and how it needs to separate and then coil back in and all these like little intricacy things. There are only like a few of those that are actually putting that into practice with their athletes, but there are still a lot of other coaches that still believe in like heavy is more. And like if I just make you super strong, then like you're going to throw it really hard.
Yeah.
Or hit the ball really far, whatever.
What have you changed? I mean, you've been doing this for a while now. What have you changed your mind about? Like, what are the biggest things you've changed your mind about with training? Like if you, like anybody, I'm sure anybody who's listening, whether you're a coach or not, it's like if you look back at your work 5-10 years ago, if you're like me, you're like, oh God, like, whoa.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, what have you changed your mind about with training?
I used to think like the old school way. Like my first athlete, Lucas Gordon, super twitchy, #1 left-hander in California, like super athlete.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, he's just hella weak. Like I have somewhere on my phone of the 20,000 videos that I have. Yeah. He was like trap bar deadlifting like 25s.
Right.
He's a baby. And I'm like, I just need to make this real strong.
Yeah.
And he's just going to throw like 98, 99.
600.
Yeah. And that's how it used to be. And then it wasn't until later on, as I started learning more and more things, taking more and more courses, getting more mentorship from Ronnie and Chris, they're like, hey, like, this is how you have to start to transition. So now it's more, I went from heavy strength stuff to split squats, then I went to like med ball throws, and now I'm getting into my mastery of movement of not really lifting that much weight anymore. It's all about positioning. Like the kids are real mad at me right now, but like having the stability to pause on squats and deadlifts, because you need the stability before you produce force rotationally. Yeah. So being able to implement the movement patterns, even in regular exercises, like a lateral lunge shouldn't just like some kind of weird rotational lateral lunge with a band and, but it's to help my athletes fill the positions they're going to need to have when they're playing baseball. Yeah. That's how I see the transition from me going from really heavy to not lifting that much. We'll still bang some weights now and then, but the form needs to be correct, and we're always moving in space somehow, some way.
Yeah, I definitely see your guys putting up numbers. Mm-hmm. But there's this conscious inclusion, I think, of a couple things. This is just my observation. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious if you have a clear framework in your head about how you design training. This whole conversation won't be about the nuances of strength and conditioning, but I think I'm just genuinely curious. Yeah. How do you think about speed strength continuum? Mm-hmm. How much time you spend at certain speeds? Mm-hmm. How do you think about including rotation? I'm just curious because, I mean, honestly, one of the beauties I think of this place, at least in theory, is that we're all going out and capturing new flags and growing the thing. Yeah. You know way more than me. I could learn so much from you, including the questions I've just asked you. I don't know your answer or any answer to how to formulate an idealistic training program. So this is genuine curiosity, but I think, how do you think about training? I sort of see some main move work that's highly loaded.
Yeah.
I see accessory work. I see you work in mobility and rotation into warm-ups. Like, map out a day, or how do you design what these guys are doing?
So there's a progression, especially with the off season, that all the kids are now done playing high school sports and my college guys are coming back. Every movement has, in my head, like 20 steps of regression, and then you can go all the way up 20 steps to a progression. So thinking about I'll start ballistic. So like med ball throws, like we can just throw a med ball on our feet, but I need them to understand shoulder hip separation. So like the easiest way to have them feel that is you like sit them down. You can't move your hips, you just move your torso. Okay. And then you just slowly work your way up. Then it's one knee, then you go standing, front facing, then it's half kneeling, then you go staggered. And then you're not teaching their body to rotate yet, you're just having them feel the position that you need to have. Then once you have that position, then you can start to put them laterally and then have them use their hips to rotate. And now we're back to the middle of just a regular med ball throw.
Because they're on their feet.
And now they can turn.
Cool.
Then you start to move them side to side to figure out the balance, the coordination. So stepping back, stepping behind, crossing over, shuffle, jump. Now you're really focusing on the stability of it, using a band for overspeed work. So again, in my head, there's the main move, and then I just work it all the way down to the most basic thing, and then slowly work my way back up to the middle, and then really start to get advanced in my movements, at least with the med ball stuff. Same thing with jumping. Always start from seated, because a lot of kids don't know how to like properly load their hips. So if I start them from that seated position, their hips are already loaded. Then I start to move them still seated in the lateral position. Then I'm like, okay, I'm going to take the bench away. Can we find that position again? There's a weird one that I liked from Phil DeRue where he slams the med ball to the side and then jumps, because it forces the kids when they slam to load their hips. Yes. Yeah. You have to load before you unload. So doing that progression. Then I take the ball away. Okay, took the ball away. Can we now just do it with body weight? Now I'm back in the standard position, that position, and
middle,
then the middle,
whatever that is, yeah.
And then we'll just continue to keep going and going and
That's
going.
Tight. Okay,
yeah.
So then that's really helpful. I see that progression for individual movement, and then program design. How do you map out a day? Are you prioritizing things in CNS order, or like?
Oh yeah.
How does that work?
Usually I'll go like middle, and then I'll go back to the top. So like how I think about it is like the highest CNS thing. So we'll jump and throw med balls or slam med balls. That like I'll map that out in my Google Excel sheet. Okay. And then I'll go into the strength portion. So like whatever block we're in. So right now we're in hypertrophy. The kids hate me right now. We're doing like 8s, pauses, whatever, and then the accessory. Once I have all the movements that I see, then I'll go back to the warm-up, kind of like how you like write a class plan. Right. And then I'm like, okay, so like what movement patterns and or muscles or joints do I need to stretch or figure out so that way they're able to move when we get down to that position.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really impressive to see. I'm curious about how you design these things, and then talk about just quickly the different levels of development. So you organize people almost by age, and so talk about the earliest group, and then all the way to the latest or oldest group, and any decision making differences between the two or the three or the four. Or
yeah, if I get a middle school kid, everything is unilateral. So
interesting.
We'll go lunges, single arm things, because at some point, whether it's an upper body exercise or a lower body exercise, they're going to start to shift one way or the other. So the CSCS book taught me that everything has to be unilateral, because you're working on the imbalances to then balance them back out to even. Okay. So after like a couple months of all the lunges, and I can go deep down of like, we're going to pause. And then we're going to eccentric, then pause, or whatever. Then now their weak side is now pretty close to your dominant side. So now when I put a bar on your back or we bench press or whatever it is, then now I don't see the hip shift.
Bambi.
Yeah, the Bambi,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
right, because they're more stable on that one leg. Then once you get to that like high school age, then everything is really the same. I'm just more aware of how much load they put on their bar. College gets fun because they're a lot older, they're a little bit more advanced. So then I can start having more fun with working on different advanced stability exercises, med ball throws, whatever it is. The pro guys, I can have all the fun because they're just the elite of the elite. They all move well. And now I can like, instead of like slowly progressing them, I can skip some steps and be like, okay, we're going to move on. I'm going to skip like 2 exercises that I usually do. Yeah. Like, show me what you got. I'm going to jump this way, then that way, then that way. Yeah.
That's cool. So there might be something here, there might not be, but I'm curious about, even though we're not the same age, I think that the era of baseball that we played in was different than it is now.
Yeah.
And we joke about some of the cultural differences. Like,
Yeah.
I really believe that we're like 8 or 10 years away from the pendulum coming back.
Yeah.
To where like the hardest thing you could do, the dopest thing you could do on a baseball field is hit a bomb and put your head down and just run around the base.
Yes.
That was culturally the place that we lived in. Now everything is like big show me bat flip.
You got a celebration for every type of hit, a single, a double, a triple. You like pimp your shit. You got a bunch of chains out. You got custom cleats.
Crazy. Yeah, that would get you in a fight back in the day. Every pitcher who punches somebody out has a sword they're putting away, whatever. Anyway, those are some of the cultural differences. But the folks that I still know connected to the baseball world have given me like some insight on how much analytics and tech and certain metrics have taken over the game.
Yeah.
Do you think about that at all? Do you find yourself being like the old crusty guy who's like, you guys don't get it? Or are you playing into that? Speak on that.
Metric wise, I just think about the different positions that hitters and pitchers need to be in. So there's, way more video analytics and force plates and all this kind of stuff. And there you can put the little dots on yourself to see yourself move in 3D, whatever it is. And I take that into account because I'm like, okay, like the kids love how like, they're like, why do you know so much about pitching? You were an infielder. And I'm like, they're just positions. It's like lifting. They're just positions. I just need to get you to be in that position on time. And then you're going to find whatever max velo you have in you. There's genetic potential involved. We all know that, but they're all just positions. So I buy into the analytics side of like how to move your body. Now on the analytics side of like baseball, we're just swinging for the fence now, to be honest. Like there's strikeouts are at an all-time high and whatever it is. And there was the launch angle thing for a couple of years. Everyone wants to swing like Aaron Judge. And I'm trying to like loop. And I'm like, the dude's like 6'8", 300 freaking pounds of solid muscle.
That's a whole conversation where I think it's like people are, for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, there's a lot of debates about approach in baseball. And I think it's really come down to semantics of language, where it's like people watch on video a certain launch angle or bat angle through the zone. And what's really happening is, the barrel's dropping below the hands, but then you have all these evangelists trying to teach kids to do that. And when we were growing up, everybody was saying, live on top of the baseball or whatever. And I think it's just, that was the approach. What happens in real life is different than the approach. It's sort of similar to like telling an athlete to put the weight in their heels.
Yeah.
It's a reaction.
We're trying to get you to feel something that like you're like overcompensating for. Like most kids will get under. So if you tell someone to stay on top, then they end up just being through the ball in the middle.
Yeah. Tangent, whatever.
Yeah.
But so, if a parent or a player comes to you and they're like, my spin rate, exit velocity, do you get involved in any of those metrics or no? You're kind of like, if I do a great job here, those numbers will go up.
Okay. I don't get too far into that. So
do you think, I don't want to put you in a position where you're like talking trash on the scene of strength and conditioning coaches, but as like a warning or just observation, what do you think strength and conditioning coaches are doing poorly in the team sport environment?
I think it's just coaching their kids. I think it's super lazy, and even high level facilities will give their kids or their athletes a sheet of paper and be like, okay, go ahead. You're going to ask the 14-year-old Bambi kid to squat unsupervised with no coaching of how to do it properly. But those guys get to, get kids in because they have the metrics. They have I can teach you how to throw a ball. And you're like, well, stay on your side. Stay in your lane. Yeah. There are too many baseball facilities trying to be strength and conditioning facilities.
Out of scope of
you don't really know what you're doing strength and conditioning side. Baseball side, for sure, 100%. But you don't know how to coach that. You don't know how to program that. So, don't sell your kid on something that's you don't know how to do properly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Yeah, I'm curious about the culture element of what you do. Because one of the things that I think you do really well is your rapport with your people.
Yeah.
Right? You find a way to, you're not just coaching these people well and creating value. There's something more happening. There's a culture that's there.
Yeah.
Tell me about the culture of this group and how do you cultivate that? Do you do that on purpose? Is that magic? Tell me about this culture.
It's something that I was blessed with to have when I was their age. Again, a bunch of, mentors that were older than me, college baseball players when I was in high school that would talk to me how I needed to be talked to. Hey, you need to do this. I need to lead you toward this path. And I think a lot of kids are uneducated about how much hard work and how many things you have to do to make it at this next level. And I just want to bring that back to those kids, and knowing that most of these kids, it's think they're really good at baseball. They don't need it's every kid thinks that at some point. And I found that when I was younger and I didn't really do this, and when I didn't have this mentorship role, I would send them off to school at a D1 school, and they would just come back just distraught, oh my God, what did I just do? That was just way different. Yeah. And then I felt very responsible. I was like, well, this is on me. I didn't prepare you for this, whether this is my job or not. But I don't feel like I'm just a strength coach. I need to best prepare you for what's about to happen. So having these tough conversations in it, depending on the age, right? If they're 15, 16, I just need you to understand the discipline and the hard work. Mm-hmm. When you're 17, 18, and you're getting closer to leaving me, that's when I start having those harder conversations. That's not good enough. I need more, because how about this? When you get to the next level, you're going to be expected to do more. Mm-hmm. I need your mentality to change. You think you're at the top. Right now you are at the top. But when you go up to Division I or the pro level, you're not going to be on top anymore. Yeah. And then how are you going to deal with that? And
coaching athletes is cool.
No.
You can do that. That's 100%. Not a conversation you can have with someone in the 9 a.m. class.
No. And that's why I love the athlete side, because I can get up into someone and be like, yo, I'm gonna tell you what's good right now. I need more from you. Mm-hmm. With adults, I'm just dude, I'm just happy you showed up. That's just a different win for them,
It's different. What does that look like for a 15 or 16-year-old? How many times a week are they seeing you? Is there a cultural thing where guys miss and there's a whole accountability thing?
Yeah.
People come whenever they want. How's that work?
There's trying to teach a 15, 16-year-old is obviously very tough. Committing to something that is hard, and especially with the kids that have to wake up at 6 a.m., knowing that it's real easy for them to be like, I'm not going to come today. So, one, me doing the well, your parents going to pay me for this.
Right. Okay.
So you owe me now.
Interesting.
But then also be talking to them after, be hey, so the next level is I don't want to just have to keep doing this. At some point, I don't want your parents' money. I want you to come in for yourself. Right. And if I, as a coach in this space, am on their side and they know I'm on their side and I only want what's best for them, then they start to buy into what I'm saying. Because knowing that like, hey, like I'm only having this hard conversation with you and I want you to be better because I love you and I want you to succeed at whatever potential you have in your body. But what's going on right now, like, it's just bullshit. Like how are you going to like develop yourself? And if I create the buy-in of like, I'm on your side, then everything that comes out of my mouth next, they're like, okay, like he's with me. Like he's not just being an asshole.
Yeah. Does some percentage of your athletes, are they coming not from their own desire? Like the parents are bringing them to you. And then does that change over time? Like I would imagine that whether it's 50-50 or 70-30 or whatever, some percentage of the kids come to you because mom, dad, whatever. Mm-hmm. But then maybe by the end, everybody's there because they want to be there. Yeah. Is that something you observe?
Yeah. I think a lot of young kids parents want them to do the strength conditioning thing. And it's obviously a harder session because I know they don't want to be there and I'm all the way bought in. So it's trying to slowly get them to see the benefit. Like, hey, like this is how this applies to your game.
Right.
Or, hey, like this is how we're getting better today.
Yeah.
And the great thing about strength conditioning is like, once you start to build that confidence and you're like, I love when the kid's like, man, like I'm starting to hit the ball harder. Like I'm starting to throw the ball harder. And you're like, well, no shit. Yeah. well, yeah. Like, I'm like, well, you're putting in the work, but how about this? You just have to continue to keep working. Like it's a long process.
Yeah. Seeing some outcome from that. We've never had a different section on this podcast, but I'd like to try a new segment with you, Kyle. Oh, and this is the segment where we hear from our audience. Our audience is not the right way to say it. Where we hear from your athletes. I asked some of your boys. I was like, I'm going to talk to Kyle on this podcast. What would you like for me to ask him? Yeah. So you mentioned Lucas, and so you gave some context. But before I ask you some of his questions, who's Lucas Gordon? Where is he now? Yeah. Who's this person we're about to hear a question from?
Yeah. Lucas is my first ever athlete. He went to Notre Dame, highly talented pitcher, would have got drafted out of high school if it wasn't for COVID. Played at Texas for 3 years, had a great career, ended up being a first team All-American his junior year. Got drafted to the White Sox last year. He's my first ever draft guy. People think it's Pete Crow Armstrong, and if you know Pete Crow Armstrong, you just look up Cubs Pete Crow Armstrong, and you're going to see who Pete Crow Armstrong is. But Pete was already drafted when I got him, so I don't take credit for Pete Crow Armstrong. Okay, cool. So Lucas was my first one.
Got
it. And now he's with the White Sox playing in low A, and all my athletes will laugh, but he's like my baby. Like that, like he's my first ever kid, and he always jokes about like, I helped you with this. Like, I built the Dawg Pound. I was like, I never said you didn't help me. I'm very thankful. I mean, he has done so much. He's brought all of his D1 friends, and then they've brought more D1 friends. And I can always trickle down to be like, oh, you're from Lucas Gordon because that person came. This is the connection of it. So
okay, cool. Yeah. That's helpful context.
Yeah.
So I spoke with Lucas.
Did he respond to you?
Of course. Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah.
I gotta talk to him after this. This is crazy.
All right. So he wanted me to ask you about your growth in such a short time and how you handled it. And I think that's a great question because we didn't really talk about the timeline of all this, but I guess time flies and you're not new at this, but in a short amount of time, you went from former athlete, curious about coaching, to probably the most successful coach in this space that I know around here. So that's the question. What do you got?
It's a growth. You said like the growth of it.
Yeah. So the question is, how did you deal with your growth in such a short amount of time? How did you handle that?
I never thought or still think that I know enough in anything. And I think having that mindset of there's always more to learn has really helped me with strength conditioning, the business side, the mentorship side, to where I go home and I'm like, I feel like I don't know enough. Like I need to know more. And he pushes me because every year he comes back, he needs more help. And especially this last year when he got to go to the White Sox facility, and he got tested for some of these things, and his strength guy is telling him some stuff, and like me and him and his strength guy will talk, and I'm like, oh, like I'm learning more and more things, and it just shows me that like I need to know more, especially for someone like him, because he is at the pro level.
Yeah.
So always having that mindset of never being complacent. I don't think I've made it at anything.
Yeah.
There's still so much more to do.
That's a great bit of self-awareness. I think that tell me if this resonates with you. People come into my life like a bat out of hell. Mm-hmm. They're loud. They blow up the DMs. They kick down my front door. I want to do this. They talk a lot.
Yeah,
shit
for sure. For sure.
And you, as a mentor, and we'll talk about transitioning from being a mentee to a mentor in a bit, but you too are interfacing with young coaches, young entrepreneurs that want what you have. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure you deal with a lot of the same thing. People that they want to tell you all the stuff they're going to do, whatever, right? And I think what's hard, and maybe what I'd like to highlight in part with this podcast, is I really think that people who are successful like you need to help young people see the real target, because a lot of people are shooting at the wrong target. Yeah. And a lot of that is reinforced by what we see visually on social media. It looks like a cool job. It looks like it's in the sun. It looks like it's on Instagram. But like, you have that humility thing where you go home and rack your mind around growth and all that. And I find that generally I'm dealing with a lot of people who are curious to learn that don't have that internal locus of control where they go home and they are bettering themselves without their hand being held. Yeah. I don't know. I see that in you. Do you see that in people who come to you to like do the thing, have your job?
I see a lot of talkers. I haven't met, I don't want to like toot my own horn, but like someone like me yet. Whether it's a kid or an adult looking to coach. I think a lot of people, again, like you said, they want like the shiny thing. Like they want to be at the top already. And you're like, well, like the top, you're here. There's so much stuff that you have to do. Yeah. And they don't realize all the things that we do and think about. And they just want the instant gratification of like, oh, like I want to be here. You're like, well, if you want to be here, then you have to do this, and this. And like you talk about like the barrier of entry thing for coaches prep. And this really resonated with me, which is, the thing that you put in the contract, which is like you have to shadow a class a day. Mm-hmm. And you're like, it's like really freaking low, in my opinion. It's one class a week.
Minimum. Yeah, it's so bare minimum.
Some people can't even freaking do that. Yeah. And then I also tell coaches that like want to coach, you're like, well, that's going to take you too long. Like you just do 4 classes a day for like the rest of the time till you pass all your tests. Yeah. And then then we can start. Yeah. But if you can't even show up, you can't even listen to what Logan's saying. Yeah. Like even when you're shadowing class, like something that always resonates with me is, you're like, you always tell us, you need to act like you're coaching class. You need to be in it with that coach. Yeah. Problem solving, all these things. But people will show up, look at their notepad, look up, not jot anything down, have no questions, not actually be problem solving like you are as a coach. Yeah. And then they never actually get that. And it's like, I don't think it's like I always tell people, like, it's not that hard. You just listen and you just execute.
Yeah, it's not that complicated. I think it's hard for people to do the mundane part of excellence. Yeah, it's the work. And I think I'll stand by this, but like a lot of high level or like college athletes, if you've went through that struggle, you can do anything in the world because it forces you for your entire life to do all those mundane things, to wake up, to hit tees off or balls off the tee, to throw every day, to run every day, to do all those things. A lot of other people have never done that in their entire life. So then they get here and they're like, fuck, like this is hard. Yeah. It's funny. Colton, a mutual friend of ours,
Gang.
one time said, we were talking about hiring people and like, the rite of passage thing. It's imperfect, whatever. And I go, what would be the thing that you would add to like our process to like work through some of the filter things that we try to do around here? And he was like former athletes only. I'm not even trying to work with, I was like, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. One more question from Lucas. So, he wanted me to ask you about the different traits in his athletes that are more successful than others. And like, do you notice differences between who tends to have more success than other athletes? Because I'm sure you get a lot of talented guys.
Yeah. It's going to sound weird, but I can tell if an athlete is going to make it or not by the way they just listen. Because the highest level athletes can listen and focus within a second. So like I always go through the levels. So like a high school kid is always like wandering around, looking around. I have to explain it like 4 freaking times. Yeah. The college kids are a little bit more mature. So like, but I still have to explain it. The pro guys, I'll explain it once. They know all the little intricacies of whatever I'm talking about, and then they'll do it. And then they can go through the balance of having fun, because training is fun too. Like you've been around the boys, like we're having fun, but then they can turn it on within a split second and focus on that one thing that they're doing and then turn it on and then turn it off. And I see some of those traits with some younger high school kids and some college kids, but in their training, that's like a trait that I think is an eye opener for me, but like, oh, like you have a chance at a young age.
Laird one time said, and I was like, what are you talking about? He said that the model athlete is just like the house dog, the dog at the house. And I'm like, what? And he's like, it's about the ability to upregulate and downregulate. Like you said, turn it on and turn it off. Yeah. Like think about what a dog does at the house. It like sits in the corner all day and does nothing. But then like when the doorbell rings and the mailman's there, it's like 0 to 100. Boom. And then I can shut it off, turn it on. And it's really interesting. And you notice that attention or lack thereof in the athletes. That's cool. Who's Cole Clark?
Cole Clark. Wow. He's an athlete who's been with me for going on 4 years now. We've had a great relationship where he was the typical stud high school kid that all mission league this, all mission league that, and me trying to mentor him and be like, hey, like you're good now, but I'm telling you the stuff that you have now in high school is not going to play in college. And he thought it was too good to listen. And he's like, Kyle, I don't know what he's talking about.
Interesting.
Goes to LMU his first year and just gets absolutely railed. Like just the high ERA, the velo dropped still, like, and you're like, he comes back and he's like, man, like, I don't like my coach. Like, I think I want to transfer. And I'm like, I don't think you transfer. Like the transfer portal, like you can transfer schools now. There's not a penalty for it anymore, right? And I was like, well, you had a really bad year. Like, I don't think anyone picks you up. But because he sees all these high-level guys that are entering the portal and getting picked up next day, he was like, I'm still like that. And I was like, hey, it's your life. This is what I'm going to advise you. Just stay at LMU and just keep developing. Enters the portal, and just nobody hits his line. A couple schools are like talking to him, but never pulled the trigger. So we're working out in the summer. He's like, man, I don't know what to do, whatever. And this is when Lucas was back for a little bit before the draft. And I said, hey, we should go play catch with Lucas. Like, just maybe he'll learn something, you know? So we go down to UCLA and they're playing catch and Lucas is doing his stretches, right? He's got his routine down and I'm sitting down. I'm not throwing. I don't need to stand. Lucas can do his own stretches by himself. Yeah. And Cole's sitting with me. Okay. Cole's about to play catch.
Right. He's not preparing.
No.
Yeah.
They start to throw and Cole just goes, arm circle. Good. And Lucas is like,
what was that?
I'm like, all right.
Oh, wow.
So they start playing catch and Cole just threw like shit. And after they came in and Lucas just looks at him and goes, why the fuck were you here? And I was like, oh. And he was like, his eyes like lit up and he was like, what do you mean? He goes, sat on your ass for 30 minutes while I stretched. We played catch. You're just throwing the ball. You're not working on anything. Yeah. So like I said, why the fuck are we here? What are you doing here, dude? And he just laid into him about like, dude, you got to do this, and this. And And you like saw it click for Cole Clark. And I'm like sitting in the back, like, I would wonder if someone told you this last year. It's crazy. But me. And he finally understood the work that it needed to take from one of the guys that he does look up to, Lucas. And from that point on, for 9 months, was a psychopath of just developing everything, his strength, his mobility, his sleep, his eating, his mechanics. And lo and behold, he jumps like 3 miles an hour on his freaking fastball. Now was like one of the best junior college pitchers in California or the nation, whatever.
Right.
And then got an offer to go play at Cal.
I genuinely didn't know that backstory. That's crazy. Okay.
Yeah.
And then like for folks that are listening that aren't like baseball people, or maybe you're not even in strength and conditioning, hopefully you're reading through the lines here, which is this is a high performing guy who's observing a killer, Lucas Gordon, All-American, professional athlete. And Lucas, so if you look at the totem pole of like who's where, you have Lucas here, Cole is aspiring to be there. Meanwhile, they're practicing together.
Yeah.
And Lucas is getting better with every minute than he is. So a guy like Cole will just never catch him.
Never catch him.
And
Never.
That being called out is like, that's an epic story.
Yeah.
That's cool. So yeah, Cole he signed with Cal, and it sounds like he's in a good place. So his question is actually interesting, man. So now he's figured out college. So he wants to know about pro ball.
Oh.
He's like, from a mentality standpoint, what do you see as what's needed to move from college to pro ball?
Wow. I think dealing the mental part of the game, I think, is what separates college players from pro players. And when I say mentally, it's how you deal with failure. Because a lot of good college kids that do get drafted, like they'll go through like a little bit of ups and downs, but they never like really shoot down. So they never actually learn through their career how to deal with a lot of failure in their life.
Pitchers too, especially.
Yeah. And I think being able to learn how to deal with failure and stay even keeled through those ups and downs and never getting too down on yourself is what's going to help them continue to keep developing and then performing at a high level. Because when you get to that next level from college to pro, it's even a bigger jump. It is a scary thing where, freaking Lucas is balling his face off and the kids are like, well, when is he going to get called up? I was like, you see those other savages that are in AA, AAA. I'm like, you see Paul Skeens up there, who, if you don't know Paul Skeens, is throwing 101 mile an hour fastballs for like 7,000 innings. Like, it's crazy.
There's levels.
And I'm like, the level from college to pro is a big jump. So when you get to that level, there's going to be a lot of adversity. But it's how you deal with that adversity is what's going to allow you to stay and continue to keep going up. Because if you don't deal with that adversity, it's a quick, okay, bye, I don't need you anymore. There's another 20 kids in every draft.
Yeah.
They're going to come up that are younger than you, that are as good as you. I don't need you anymore. It's a quick thing. So if they don't know how to deal with that, they're just going to get cut really, really soon.
Yeah. That's dope. So I want to switch gears like towards the end here and talk about the business side of things. Do you feel like your vision for what the Dawg Pound is going to be is always clear? Has that changed over time? And give a little bit of context on what's like the model, if you're willing. Like, do people pay you like one at a time? Are they signed up for a season? Talk about the Dawg Pound as a business.
This is a funny story. So, like, how I started the Dawg Pound was former coach here, Juan. His brand was like the Hooligan Strength Gang, and his logo was a bull. And Juan was I have a lot of mentors, but like I was very close with Juan.
Yeah, that was your mentor.
So I felt like I needed to make my own brand, and I felt like I was like, well, he has a bull, like it should be an animal. True story, bro. I was like, well, I need to.
Animal check.
Check. So yeah.
Colors check.
So then I was like, all right, well, what's a cool animal? Like tiger, like dragon. I don't know. Like, what's a dope animal? And I remember thinking, like, I love watching NBA basketball, and like they always talk about like really gritty players. Like they're like, man, that dude just got that dog in him. And I'm like, oh, like the Dawg Pound. Like that'd be sick. Like whatever.
Sick,
So I just created the Dawg Pound from thinking I needed an animal on my freaking logo. And I think how I've grown it is taking business prep 101, because it was like a brand, but like it was just me coaching kids. Like I never thought it could be anything more until you started talking to me about the different colors, how you price things, and you got to take the course if you want to start a brand. I'll this ain't no paid partnership, dog. I'm just being flat out. Like, man's a genius.
To bring that up, but,
so I would do it. But learning all those like nuances in business, I was like, I can then start to map out like, okay, like this is like what it should feel like. This is the colors and like the whatever, and over time, starting to, I guess like the pricing is just like, hey, like for me, it's not packages. Want to have like 1,000 kids, and like there's just too much to track. And then I want to like also put it on the kids, which is like, hey man, like you pay for what you get. So if you want to come like be consistent, then like just show up and do it. I don't need you to like buy 10 and then be like, okay, bye. Like you're gonna see the development. You just got to keep staying with it. Also makes it easy for me to like just like mark it down. Like, hey, like
you're in or you're out.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? The price. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And what do you think the future is? Like, I think one of the things you said earlier is, and just as like your friend or whatever, I'm like, man, Kyle, what if he could make another Kyle?
Yo,
You know what I mean?
yes.
Is that part of the vision, or where does this go? What do you think?
Shout out Chris Pasquale, because Chris has been harping me on this. He's like, you got to start developing coaches, and you're going to run out of time, and there's only one of you, so like you're going to need help at some point. It's going to grow to its peak, and then how you get it to grow more is you're going to need help. And I'm like a stubborn motherfucker. I was like, not me. Like I'll just do this forever. I don't need no help. I'm starting to realize like I'm going to need help at some point. And I think the hard part is, because this is my baby, the next person that I bring on would need to mostly care about this as much as I care about it, and be all the way bought in. And it kind of starts with how I think about it. I haven't like mapped it out in my head, but the barrier to entry of like, I have certain things in my head of like, I need this person to like do these hard things. And if you pass these hard things, I'll teach you everything that I know. But it's a hard thing of like, you got to show up every hour of every day. You got to be able to lift. You have to earn the respect of me, lifting wise, movement patterns, med ball throws, jumps, strength wise. Because I know, speaking from personal experience, the kids will test you. And if the kids don't respect how you lift or how you move, they're not going to listen to you. And then I can't trust you as a coach. If you can't get my own kids to listen to you, like, what are we going to do? And I think I would start with those two things.
Yeah.
And it would be hard, for sure.
Yeah, it will be hard. Who's Johnny Tincher? Because you say that, and he wanted me to ask you a question. And I didn't ask you.
Wait, hold on. He texted you back? Lucas will text me back like once a week.
Listen, dude,
I
pulled in some big favors.
I've texted
texts.
Johnny Tincher 5 times in a row and just have not heard a response. Anyways.
Because what you just said was like, they got to respect you. And that's the thing that I observe from a leadership perspective, is that you have the respect of all these guys. And it's not all like what you got on the bar or whatever, but it's not nothing. Because the reason why I bring this up is, and he's, kind of trying to be funny, but he's like, why is it that he could lift heavy and jump high as hell for how small he is? That was a jab, compliment with a jab.
Yes.
But tell us who Johnny Tincher is, and then just sort of like, do your best to answer his question.
Yeah.
That is a jab.
Yeah. So Johnny Tincher came from the Lucas Gordon tree. So he was, I think, dude, him and Lucas have known each other since they're like 7. Yeah, crazy. He went to Birmingham High School. Man's a legend at Birmingham. Has like his own like poster. Right. Yeah. This is from like 2018 or whatever. Yeah. So it was a legend at Birmingham High School. Goes to Washington. Played for 4 years. 2-time Pac-12 first team defensive player of the year. Gets drafted in the 11th round to the Cleveland Guardians. I've been with him for 4 years now. The dude is a savage. The dude is 5'6". We just mentioned how being small and playing at a high level is tough. He says he's 5'9", 5'6". He's like an inch. Yeah, he's an inch taller than me. But the dude is the hardest working mother effer that I know. Yeah. And he's got that chip on his shoulder. And like as a small guy, you have to have that chip on your shoulder to make it at that level. And I think to answer his question, how am I gonna lift or jump really high at my frame? That was something I really thought about, because whether it's supposed to work like this or not, you get judged as a strength and conditioning coach by what you do, like what you can do as an athlete. And because I'm not an aesthetic person, 5'5", like 150, soaking wet. I don't have like abs. I don't have like big biceps. I don't have like humongous legs. So I was like, how am I going to get these kids when I'm not known as a coach? So this is like really early in my career. How am I going to get them to respect me? And I was like, I'm going to just have to outlift and outmove everyone that I coach.
Interesting.
That's the only way I can do this. Because as a small person, and kids will still challenge me to this day, be like, man, like, you can't lift that. And I'll be like, you want to see something cool? Like I'll pull your max for reps cold right now. And I'll do it. It'll hurt. It'll hurt.
That's amazing.
But just like show them like, hey, like I can do this. I might not look like it, but it's that lifting part and that jumping part, that movement part where like, if I'm better than you, you would just have to listen to me, whether I look the part or not.
Interesting.
So like I would crush my body just to get some respect, you know?
That's cool. So last little bit here, you've been on teams as an athlete. You've been on, this team at Deuce and all that those experiences, I think probably, add up to some awareness around team culture and performance. Yeah. What are your thoughts on team culture, how to build it? What advice would you give to somebody who's trying to build a team and trying to build something remarkable like you have? How would you coach them up?
They're leaders and they're followers. And as a leader, you have to do all the things at a high level to get the people on your team to follow you, right? Because on a team, not everyone's a leader, and not everyone's a follower. But if the leader isn't at that high level and he's slacking off, he's not working hard, he's not doing his job, and we're not talking about like performing, but just the work. You're not running hard on the bases, you're not taking extra reps or whatever. And if you're expected to lead someone and you get into their ass and be like, yo, like I need you to do better. If you're not at that level, they're not going to listen to you. So then you would have to perform. So I think it always starts with the leader, and like the leadership of, I'm very lucky that I have you and Chris in my life, right? To where like you guys are great leaders. Like I always think about it. I was like, man, like I feel like I'm working decently hard, but like I don't know what you two motherfuckers are doing. But like in my head, I'm like, y'all working way harder than me. Like I need to continue to keep growing and learning, because if they're doing that and that's where I want to be, then like I want to be able to reach that level. Like I just have to match your intensity, your focus, your work ethic, all the above to get to that spot. And then it'll just trickle down, as if the leader is good, then the team will then follow suit. Yeah. And then as, the leader I'm starting to learn this with mentorship and stuff like that. I'm a little new to it, but it's a hard thing, yo. Like having different personalities. How do you talk to someone? Like, what does that person want? Like, how do you get them to like feel the way you feel and, like want it as bad as you want it? Like, it's hard. But if the leader is at the top and he's or she is doing all those things, then you'll have a successful team.
Yeah. That's cool, man. I don't want to put you fully on blast, but I think very few people have been able to accomplish what you've been able to accomplish in I should say ever over the course of their life. But you've done so much in a short amount of time. I mean, there's specifically one coach here who's bought a house. That's you. Okay. So what's up? You know what I mean? Yeah. You've created a remarkable amount of value And I really admire how you go about doing that. I guess for the people that are listening, where can they find you, follow what you got going on, tell them about podcasts, IGs, all that?
Yeah. Instagram handle Kyle_Henmi too. I don't know why baseball players always have to have, well, you don't, but me and Chris and Ronnie had a number after it, so it's 2. What else do I got? I won't give up my Snapchat. And then my business one is Dawg Pound, so Dawg Pound Athletics. And then I do also have a podcast like Logan. I'm trying to be like the big dog here. And I'm going to get him on mine too.
Let's go.
Mine is a little less advanced. It's just the phone and headphones, like AirPods and stuff. But the Going Pro podcast, powered by Dawg Pound Athletics, just talking about, mentorship and what an athlete needs to go pro.
Yeah. Last question. If someone was about to get into this industry, they wanted to be a coach, they wanted to do what you do, and they're starting at 0, what does the next 3 to 5 years of their life look like?
Being at the gym every single day with a notebook and pad, and you just follow everyone around with everything that they do. Because I think that's what helped me. And if you do that for 3 or 5 months, you're going to realize, I love this, I'm all the way in. Or you could be like, this is a lot. This is not that great. I'm all the way out. And that's totally fine. But again, having to live the life that we live and being around us all the time, you get to understand oh, this is a lot harder than I thought. Yeah. You get to see the shiny stuff on Instagram, but you don't see all the extra stuff that we're doing outside of that.
Google Docs.
Yeah.
I remember pissing off a coach one time, just saying, I wish more coaches spent more time on their computer.
Yo.
And he was very triggered by that. I think that's a truer expression of the full story.
Yeah.
Well, bro, keep killing it. I really appreciate you chatting with me.
Thank you.
Respect what you're doing, and let's keep it moving.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.
All right, that's Kyle Henmi. People talk about the P word a lot. Your newsfeed is full of some influencer type going on and on about process. But I can't underscore enough how different it is to live it. And Kyle is process personified. He's specifically crushing life because he is ready, willing, and able to do the small details for 1,000 days in a row. There are so many people that want great things that just can't string together the little things for 1,000 days in a row. And Kyle is a champion of this idea. Next episode, we're going to continue this absolute onslaught of genius coaches coming your way. I'm so excited to bring back a conversation from season 1 with one of my favorite people in the world, Carl Paoli. Carl Paoli's pedigree speaks for itself. We're releasing the full conversation that you heard from season 1 with the Spanish gymnast turned New York Times bestselling author, world-renowned movement coach, Carl Paoli.
Flow usually shows up when you let go, and you just do.
Yeah.
And eventually you get into it. But if you start to seek flow, you're not going to find it.
Right.
That's the biggest problem. And I think this happens in gymnastics. And if you want to do really well, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
And this is where this cliche, quote of enjoy the process comes in. Right. Where it's that sounds like such bullshit. But basically what that's saying is saying that the preparation, the journey or the doing, and the integration of what you learn through the journey is all folding into itself in this very moment. Which, if you're thinking about it that way, you're like, oh my God, that's too much for me to even intellectually assimilate. Well, that's the thing, because flow is not something that you can explain in words. It's just something that you are in that moment, and when you are there, you just know.
Yeah,
right. But yeah, it showed in gymnastics. Anytime there was no expectations and you just did what had to be done, you would enter a state of flow. And then you would come out on the other side and you'd be like, oh my goodness, that was a trip.
Yeah.
I would love to go back to that. How do I get there?
Frankly, I was and still am Carl's biggest fan. Ultimately, over the years, becoming his friend still feels like, I pulled some trick on the universe. So I just try to keep a straight face. It would be like becoming friends with Robert De Niro, and then every time you hang out with him, you got to pretend like that's normal. Okay. Carl has really informed not just my perspective on training, but he's changed the perspective of strength and conditioning around the world with a concept we'll talk about later, skill transfer. Okay, guys, that's it. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget, if you want to level up your leadership capacity, you can apply to the Leadership Laboratory, and the rest is history. There's 100 leaders from around the world getting after it in a private group, and all that can be found at holdthestandard.com. Thank you, and of course, please choose leadership.